Chapter 1 Ordinary Days. Mark Smith woke before his alarm. It wasn't unusual. His mind had learned, over the years, to rise before obligation demanded it. The ceiling above him was dim, washed in the pale gray of early morning, and the city outside was still half asleep. He lay still for a moment. Another day of decisions. Another day of careful words and watchful eyes. Being an omega in his position meant being flawless, or at least appearing so. His gender was a fact people pretended not to care about until it became inconvenient for them. Until a boardroom fell quiet at his voice. Until his authority unsettled someone who expected dominance to come packaged in a different way. Mark exhaled and sat up. His schedule was already filling his tablet when he glanced at it. Investor meeting, policy review, dinner he didn't want to attend. Normal. Predictable. He dressed with practiced efficiency, choosing a neutral suit that neither invited attention nor deflected it. By the time he stepped into the elevator, he was composed, calm, unreadable, controlled. Exactly what the world expected. Jack Reeves woke up late. Again. He groaned, rolled over, and checked his phone. Shit. He was out of bed in seconds, tugging on yesterday's jeans and a clean shirt he grabbed from the chair. His apartment was small but warm, cluttered with textbooks and mismatched furniture that made it feel lived in rather than messy. He liked it that way. He brushed his teeth while skimming notes for his afternoon class, social cognition, one of his favorites. People made sense to him. Patterns, behaviors, emotions. He liked understanding why someone acted the way they did. The rest of life was less predictable. He jogged the 3 blocks to the restaurant where he worked, breath puffing in the morning air. The place was quiet when he arrived, all polished wood and soft lighting, waiting to be filled. Morning sunshine, his coworker teased as he clocked in. Lies, Jack replied, grinning anyway. It was just another day. A long one. Nothing special. They met at 9:47 a.m. Mark had come in because his morning meeting had been rescheduled, leaving an unexpected gap in his day. The restaurant was quiet, refined, understated, the kind of place people chose when they wanted privacy disguised as elegance. Jack was wiping down a table when he looked up. For a moment, the world didn't stop. It didn't tilt or hum or burn. It simply narrowed. Mark paused. Not because of attraction, at least not in the way he recognized. Something about the man approaching him registered as different. Not dangerous. Not overwhelming. Just present. Good morning, the man said, voice warm, unforced. Table for one? Yes, Mark replied, then hesitated. By the window, if possible. Of course. Their eyes met briefly. That was it. No lightning. No pull. Just a faint, inexplicable sense of awareness. Like realizing a room had gone quiet without knowing when. Jack led him to the table, pulled out the chair with an easy courtesy, and handed him a menu. I'll be right back with some water. Thank you. Mark watched him walk away, unsettled by how normal it all felt. And yet, something inside him refused to fully relax. He dismissed the thought. People were allowed to be interesting. Jack felt it too, though he didn't know what it was. Not attraction exactly. Not nerves. More like attention sharpened slightly too much, as if the air had grown clearer. He poured the water, steadying his hands. Get a grip. When he returned, Mark thanked him quietly, politely. Their fingers brushed as Jack set the glass down. That was when it happened. Not a spark. A pause. Jack's breath caught. Not sharply, just enough to notice. A warmth spread through his chest, subtle but immediate, like recognition without memory. Mark inhaled at the same moment, shoulders stiffening almost imperceptibly. They both stilled. For half a heartbeat, the world seemed to lean inward. Then it passed. Jack straightened, confused. Can I get you anything else? Coffee, Mark said slowly. Black. Jack nodded and stepped away, heart thudding too fast for no reason he could name. Across the room, Mark sat perfectly still. His pulse had quickened. That was all. But it was enough to unsettle him. They spoke again when Jack returned with the coffee. A few words. Polite exchanges. Nothing more. And yet when Mark stood to leave, something tugged faintly at his attention. An unfamiliar reluctance. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome," Jack replied. Their eyes met again. This time something lingered. Not recognition. Not destiny. Just awareness. They didn't exchange names. They didn't touch again. They didn't even smile. But when Mark stepped back onto the street, the city felt slightly off balance. And when Jack returned to wiping tables, he found himself glancing toward the door far more often than necessary. Neither understood why. Chapter 2: The Weight of Attention. The article appeared 2 days later. Not a scandal. Not even gossip, really. Just a photograph taken through the restaurant window. Mark seated alone, sunlight touching his shoulder. Tech CEO takes low-key lunch downtown. It should have been harmless. But people noticed everything about Mark Smith. His assistant brought it up gently. "They're speculating again." Mark glanced at the image. "About what?" "About why you were there." He exhaled slowly. "Of course they are." The implication was quiet but sharp. Who had he met? Why there? Omegas at his level didn't go unnoticed, especially not when unaccompanied. He waved it off. "It's nothing." But the words felt hollow. Jack saw the article that evening, sent by a coworker with a string of question marks. He stared at the photo for a long moment. That's him. The realization hit differently now. Not awe, just awareness. He remembered the calm in the man's eyes, the weight of his presence. He hadn't known who Mark was then. Now he did. And suddenly, everything felt heavier. The pressure came quietly. For Mark, it was subtle questions framed as concern. For Jack, it was worried looks and cautious advice. "You don't want to get pulled into something you can't step back from," his mother said carefully. "I just served him coffee," Jack replied. She studied him. Did it feel like just that? He didn't answer. 2 days later, Mark returned to the restaurant. Jack froze when he saw him. "I hope this isn't strange," Mark said, voice even. "I found I enjoyed the quiet here." Jack nodded, heart pounding. "You're welcome anytime." This time, when their fingers brushed, neither pulled away immediately. Something warm settled between them. Not a bond. Not yet. But a beginning. And outside the restaurant, unseen eyes were already watching. Chapter 3: The Shape of Something Real. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. That was what unsettled Mark most about it later. Nothing in the air warned him. No tension in the city, no unusual pressure in his chest. The day unfolded exactly as it should have. Meetings, documents, decisions made with calm efficiency. By the time he left the building, the sun had begun to sink, bathing the streets in gold. He hadn't planned to go back to the restaurant. He told himself it was convenience, a decent place to think. He didn't tell himself the truth until much later. Jack was laughing when Mark walked in. Not loudly, just a soft, genuine sound that slipped out before he could stop it. One of his coworkers had said something ridiculous, and for a moment, everything felt easy. Then he looked up. The laughter faded, not from embarrassment, but from something quieter. Awareness. A recognition he still didn't have words for. Mark paused in the doorway. This time, the moment didn't pass. It stretched. The room seemed to hush around them. Not magically, not dramatically, but enough that Jack became aware of his own breathing. Mark's chest rose and fell once, slowly, as if he'd walked into a different gravity. They were too far apart to touch. And yet, something settled into place. Jack felt it first. A warmth behind his ribs, steady and calm. Not excitement, not nerves. Familiarity. Mark's pulse quickened. This wasn't anxiety. It wasn't attraction in the usual sense. It was recognition. For the first time, the thought crossed his mind unbidden. This isn't coincidence. It frightened him. They didn't speak right away. Jack finished with his table, hands steady despite the quiet hum beneath his skin. When he finally approached, he did so slowly, almost cautiously. "Welcome back," he said. Mark nodded. "I hope that's all right." "It is." A pause. "You seem familiar." The words slipped out before Jack could stop them. Mark's breath caught. "I was thinking the same," he admitted. "Which is strange, considering we've barely spoken." Jack let out a quiet laugh, uncertain. "Yeah, I thought maybe I was just tired." "Perhaps," Mark said. But neither of them sounded convinced. They talked more this time. Small things, harmless things, work schedules, weather, the city. Yet with every sentence, the space between them felt attuned, as if their words landed with more weight than they should, as if something unseen was listening closely. Jack found himself leaning in without realizing it. Mark noticed and didn't pull back. The world beyond their table blurred into insignificance. When Jack reached to clear an empty cup, his fingers brushed Mark's wrist. This time there was no mistaking it. Warmth flared, gentle but deep, blooming outward like a slow exhale after holding one's breath too long. Mark inhaled sharply, fingers curling instinctively. Jack froze. "Oh, sorry," he murmured. But Mark didn't pull away. Neither did Jack. The contact lasted only a second longer. It was enough. Something clicked into alignment. Not a rush. Not a rush at all. A certainty. Mark's vision swam just slightly. His heartbeat steadied instead of racing. His mind cleared in a way that felt intimate, like exhaling into someone else's presence. Jack felt it too. The quiet certainty settled into his bones, warm and grounding. "Oh," he whispered before he could stop himself. Mark met his eyes. "Yes," he breathed. They both pulled back at once. Jack swallowed hard. I don't think that was normal." Mark shook his head slowly. "No, I don't think it was." They stared at each other, the truth pressing gently but insistently between them. Not attraction. Not coincidence. Recognition. The world rushed back in all at once. Mark straightened, composure snapping back into place like armor. "I should go." Jack nodded, heart pounding. "Yeah, of course." But neither moved. "I don't know what that was," Jack said finally. "But I don't think it was nothing." Mark hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Neither do I." A pause. "If you're comfortable," Mark added, "I'd like to talk again. Somewhere quieter." Jack met his gaze, something steady settling behind his eyes. "I'd like that." Mark reached into his jacket and produced a simple card, sliding it across the table. Jack took it with hands that didn't shake, though he felt like they should. "Call me," Mark said softly, "when you're ready." He left without looking back. That night, neither of them slept much. Mark lay awake, heart steady but mind spinning. The truth pressed against him, undeniable now. This wasn't chance. This wasn't curiosity. This was the beginning of a bond he had never planned for, and one he wasn't sure the world would allow. Across the city, Jack sat on the edge of his bed, Mark's card warm in his palm. He didn't feel afraid, just aware of a thread now stretched between them, unseen, unbreakable, and very real. Chapter 4: The Shape of Pressure. The morning after, Mark woke with a familiar tightness in his chest. Not panic, not dread, responsibility. It settled into him the moment his eyes opened, pressing down with the weight of expectation he had learned to carry since childhood. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar. He'd fallen asleep in the guest room of his own penthouse, documents still spread across the desk where he'd left them. He hadn't slept much, not because of nightmares, but because his thoughts kept circling one quiet truth he hadn't yet allowed himself to name. That wasn't coincidence. He sat up slowly, running a hand through his hair. The memory of Jack's warmth, steady, grounding, rose unbidden. Not desire, not fantasy, recognition. Mark exhaled and stood, already bracing himself for the day ahead. His mother called before he reached the office. "Come by tonight," she said without preamble. "Your father and I need to speak with you." Mark closed his eyes briefly. "About what?" A pause. Controlled. Measured. "You know exactly about what." He did. Jack's day was quieter in its own way, but heavier than usual. He had replayed the moment at the restaurant in his mind more times than he would admit. The weight of Mark's presence lingered, subtle, grounding, and strange in its intensity. When his shift ended, he hesitated with his phone in hand. His thumb hovered over the screen. He gave me his card. I can reach out. I can say something. After a long moment, he typed carefully, Jack, hi. I hope this isn't too forward, but I wanted to say, I'm glad you came by the other night. He stared at the message for a second, then pressed send. Mark's phone buzzed while he was reviewing reports. He glanced at the screen, heart steady but mind alert. Jack, hi. I hope this isn't too forward, but I wanted to say, I'm glad you came by the other night. Mark's breath caught, not with excitement, but with quiet attention. He tapped a careful response. Mark, thank you. That's thoughtful of you. Jack's reply came almost immediately. Jack, I didn't know if I should, but I felt like I had to say something. I wanted to see if you're okay with talking again sometime. Mark stared at the screen for a moment, then typed, Mark, I am. I appreciate you reaching out. A long pause. Jack, good. I wasn't sure if this would be weird. Mark, it isn't. Jack exhaled, the tension in his chest easing slightly. Even through messages, the quiet warmth between them was palpable. Jack, okay, then, I'll see you soon? Mark, yes. Mark placed the phone down, heart steady but mind already racing. The world outside could press, could scrutinize, could expect. But this small, deliberate connection was something they could protect. And for the first time since their encounter, he felt a glimmer of certainty beneath the pressure. The rest of the day, both carried their thoughts quietly. Mark moved through meetings with calm precision, while Jack felt an unfamiliar lightness beneath the surface tension of the day. Neither spoke of the messages aloud. They didn't have to. The bridge between them had been built. Delicate, careful, real. Outside, the city hummed. The world continued to watch. But for now, in this quiet moment, the weight had shifted just slightly. Chapter 5: Eyes Everywhere. Mark's day began like any other. Meetings, schedules, decisions, every step measured, precise, controlled. Yet beneath the surface, an unshakable tension hummed. He could feel it in the way his assistant avoided eye contact, in the subtle pause of colleagues when he entered the boardroom. By midday, the source became painfully clear. Top CEO Mark Smith spotted again with mystery companion, Alpha in tow? The headline wasn't sensational, but the photograph told its own story. Taken outside the restaurant, it caught Mark and Jack walking together. Hands brushing, proximity unmistakable. The blur of city lights behind them gave the image a quiet intimacy that would have gone unnoticed if anyone else were involved. His assistant appeared at his office door, hesitating. They've posted it. Social feeds. Analysts. Everyone is talking. Mark exhaled slowly, already bracing himself. I expected curiosity, he said quietly. Not this. They're asking for statements. Investors, media, even the board, she added softly. Mark's jaw tightened. I won't comment. Let them speculate. Jack had seen the same article on his way home. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A coworker nudged him. You're trending, she said quietly. No offense, but everyone's talking. Jack froze, heart tightening. He recognized the image instantly. The angle, the brief brush of hands, the familiar warmth Mark carried even in stillness. Everyone, he whispered. She nodded. It's bigger than we expected. Jack exhaled slowly, gripping his phone. He typed a quick message and paused, thumb hovering. Jack, hey, are you okay? Mark read it while walking through the office, people moving past him without noticing his internal pause. He typed carefully, Mark, I'm fine. You? Jack, I'm okay. Just surprised by how quickly everyone noticed. Mark, it's unavoidable. I'm glad you reached out. Jack, I wanted to. A quiet warmth spread through Mark's chest. Not desire, not relief, just the grounding certainty of connection. Mark, thank you for that. Jack, of course. We'll handle it together. Mark's breath caught at the words. Together. The first direct confrontation came that evening. Mark's parents had already summoned him to the estate. His father was pacing the study, hands behind his back, jaw tight. His mother sat composed, but her eyes were sharp, controlled. "You've been reckless," his father said, voice low but cutting. "Do you understand what this means?" "Yes," Mark replied evenly. "You don't," his mother added. "People will assume things. The board will question your judgment. Analysts will speculate. And the media, they're merciless." Mark's chest tightened. "He's not a tool. He's not anyone's pawn." "You think that because he's kind," his father said sharply. "Kindness doesn't protect you in a world like ours. You risk everything by choosing him." Mark's hands clenched. "I'm not choosing against the company. I'm choosing him as a person. That's all." His mother softened slightly. "We're trying to protect you." "I don't need protection from him," Mark said. "I need protection from a world that refuses to see past hierarchy." His father's frown deepened. "If this continues, there will be consequences." Mark met his gaze steadily. "I understand." Jack faced his own pressure. After seeing the article, his father called immediately. "I saw it," he said, voice quiet but firm. "You need to be careful." "I know," Jack replied. "Do you?" His father's tone softened, but it remained sharp. "People will assume he's using you. People will assume you're naive. You don't have the armor he does." Jack's chest tightened, not with fear of Mark, but with awareness of the world's weight. "I'll be careful." "Good," his father said. "Just don't make mistakes that can't be undone." That night, Mark returned to the restaurant. Jack was clearing tables when he saw him. Their eyes met instantly. Warmth, recognition, and unspoken tension all at once. "You're here," Jack said softly. "I had to see you," Mark replied. "Alone." Jack nodded. "I understand." They didn't speak long. Words felt fragile under the scrutiny of the world outside. But when Jack's hand brushed Mark's while setting down a glass, it wasn't just touch. It was quiet defiance, reassurance. "We are still here, despite the pressure." Mark inhaled sharply. "I won't let them hurt you." Jack's chest tightened. "I know." Outside, the city hummed with voices, speculation, and light. Inside the small restaurant, two people stood quietly, tethered together in something stronger than coincidence or observation. For a moment, the world didn't matter. But tomorrow it would. Chapter 6, Under the Spotlight. The day began like any other, but it quickly became anything but. Mark was reviewing quarterly projections when his assistant appeared at the door, holding her tablet like it was a live grenade. "They've published something," she said quietly. "It's not just speculation anymore." Mark felt his chest tighten. "Show me." The screen displayed a headline in bold letters. "Alpha Companion allegedly influencing CEO decisions. Are top tech companies at risk?" Below it, a blurry photograph of Mark and Jack leaving the restaurant circulated alongside a carefully worded article questioning Jack's influence. Every word suggested impropriety, insinuated dependency, and framed Jack as a liability rather than a person. Social media had already exploded. Analysts debated his judgment. The board had asked for an explanation. Mark exhaled slowly, his pulse steadying, but his mind raced. "They're crossing a line," he muttered. His assistant nodded. "They're calling it a potential conflict of interest. Investors are asking if you can remain objective. And people are attacking him directly." Mark's fingers curled around the edge of the desk. "They will see he's not a tool. They will see he's human." "They might not," she said gently. "They only see what they want to see." Meanwhile, Jack was staring at his phone, hands trembling slightly. A string of messages, screenshots, and gossip posts from strangers and colleagues filled the screen. "Isn't that the waiter from the restaurant? Do you think he's really influencing him? CEO seen with unknown Alpha Companion. Must be a PR stunt." Wonder what he's hiding from investors. Jack's chest ached, not from fear for himself, but from how quickly the world had twisted a simple, quiet connection into something dangerous. He typed cautiously, "Jack, Mark, they're attacking me." The response was almost immediate. "Mark, I know. I see it." "Jack, I don't know what to do." Mark paused before replying, carefully choosing words that would steady both of them. "Mark, stay calm. Don't respond publicly. Let me handle it. You're not the problem here." "Jack, I feel like I am." "Mark, you're not. You're yourself. That's enough." Jack exhaled, letting the reassurance settle in. It didn't erase the panic, but it gave him a tether. A quiet proof that he wasn't alone. By evening, Mark had already called a private meeting with his board, clarifying that Jack had no influence over decisions and that their connection was personal, not professional. He spoke carefully, firmly, but privately, leaving no room for further insinuation. Yet the media had anticipated every word. Headlines the next morning were merciless. CEO defends companion amid alleged conflict of interest. Is the board compromised? Top Tech's Omega CEO under fire. Companion or liability? Even subtle wording stung. That evening, Mark returned to the restaurant. He was tired mentally, physically, emotionally. Jack looked up when he entered, anxiety written across his features, but also a quiet determination. "You handled them," Jack said softly. Mark shook his head. "I tried, but they won't stop. They'll push, twist, spin." Jack approached him slowly, hand brushing his wrist gently. "Then we keep holding on, quietly, together." Mark inhaled sharply at the touch. The warmth, the steady presence, was the only anchor he had left. "Together," Mark echoed. The world outside hummed with scrutiny, gossip, and judgment. Inside the small restaurant, they stood quietly, tethered to one another, defying the pressure. For the first time, Mark allowed himself a thought he had been resisting. No matter what they say, no matter the scrutiny, I won't let them break this. Jack's hand tightened just slightly around his. And that was enough. Chapter 7, A Quiet Place. The city had grown loud again. Headlines, tweets, and whispers chased them like shadows. But Mark and Jack had managed to slip away. Not far, just a small cabin Mark owned on the outskirts of the city. A place he rarely visited but kept for moments when he needed silence. Tonight it was theirs. Jack exhaled as they stepped inside, shedding coats and burdens alike. The smell of wood and faint pine welcomed him, and for the first time in days, the tension in his chest eased. "I forgot how quiet it can be here," he said softly. Mark smiled faintly. "It's easy to forget when the city never stops talking." Jack glanced at him. We shouldn't even be here, really. People are looking, wondering." Mark reached for his hand. "Out there, yes, but here, no one can touch this. Not tonight." Jack let himself lean into the warmth of Mark's presence. The touch was gentle, grounding, the kind that spoke louder than words. "I see you. You're safe with me." They settled near the fireplace, the low glow of flames reflecting softly in their eyes. Jack poured coffee into 2 mugs they'd brought, and Mark accepted it with a quiet nod. They didn't speak for a long time. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with the weight of everything they'd endured, and with something fragile, steady, unspoken, trust. Finally, Jack broke the quiet. "I keep thinking about today, about the headlines, about how fast everything spiraled." Mark took a slow sip of his coffee. "It doesn't matter, not here, not us. It only matters what we choose." Jack's fingers brushed marks across the table, almost by accident, almost intentionally. The warmth lingered longer than necessary, and both felt it. Not shocking, not overwhelming, just anchoring. Mark's voice was low, careful. "I don't want you to feel responsible for any of it. None of this is your fault." Jack shook his head. "I don't feel that, but I feel exposed. Vulnerable." Mark leaned forward slightly. "Good. Then let me protect that. Let me be here with you. Quietly, safely. That's all I ask. Jack's chest tightened. Not panic, not fear, just recognition of how much he wanted the same. I want that too. They spent hours like that, talking quietly about nothing and everything. The city, the news, the subtle ways they noticed each other, the little habits, the warmth, the laughter that came easy between them here. At some point, Jack rested his head against Mark's shoulder, feeling the calm rhythm of him. Mark draped an arm across Jack's back, careful, protective, grounding. No words were necessary. Outside, the world raged. Social media continued to buzz. Reporters speculated. Families worried. But in that small cabin, the chaos was distant, irrelevant, powerless. And for the first time since they met, both of them allowed themselves a quiet thought. We can face it all. Together. Jack lifted his head, looking up at Mark. Even if the world hates it? Mark's lips curved into a small, warm smile. Even if the world hates it, we have each other. That's enough. Jack let himself believe it. For now, at least the world could wait. And in that waiting, they found something stronger than headlines, scrutiny, or expectation. They found each other. Chapter 7, A Quiet Place. The city had grown loud again. Headlines, tweets, and whispers chased them like shadows. But Mark and Jack had managed to slip away. Not far, just a small cabin Mark owned on the outskirts of the city. A place he rarely visited but kept for moments when he needed silence. Tonight it was theirs. Jack exhaled as they stepped inside, shedding coats and burdens alike. The smell of wood and faint pine welcomed him, and for the first time in days, the tension in his chest eased. I forgot how quiet it can be here, he said softly. Mark smiled faintly. It's easy to forget when the city never stops talking. Jack glanced at him. We shouldn't even be here, really. People are looking, wondering. Mark reached for his hand. Out there, yes, but here, no one can touch this. Not tonight. Jack let himself lean into the warmth of Mark's presence. The touch was gentle, grounding, the kind that spoke louder than words. I see you. You're safe with me. They settled near the fireplace, the low glow of flames reflecting softly in their eyes. Jack poured coffee into 2 mugs they'd brought, and Mark accepted it with a quiet nod. They didn't speak for a long time. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with the weight of everything they'd endured, and with something fragile, steady, unspoken, trust. Finally, Jack broke the quiet. I keep thinking about today, about the headlines, about how fast everything spiraled. Mark took a slow sip of his coffee. It doesn't matter, not here, not us. It only matters what we choose. Jack's fingers brushed marks across the table, almost by accident, almost intentionally. The warmth lingered longer than necessary, and both felt it. Not shocking, not overwhelming, just anchoring. Mark's voice was low, careful. I don't want you to feel responsible for any of it. None of this is your fault. Jack shook his head. I don't feel that, but I feel exposed. Vulnerable. Mark leaned forward slightly. Good. Then let me protect that. Let me be here with you. Quietly, safely. That's all I ask. Jack's chest tightened. Not panic, not fear, just recognition of how much he wanted the same. I want that too. They spent hours like that, talking quietly about nothing and everything. The city, the news, the subtle ways they noticed each other, the little habits, the warmth, the laughter that came easy between them here. At some point, Jack rested his head against Mark's shoulder, feeling the calm rhythm of him. Mark draped an arm across Jack's back, careful, protective, grounding. No words were necessary. Outside, the world raged. Social media continued to buzz. Reporters speculated. Families worried. But in that small cabin, the chaos was distant, irrelevant, powerless. And for the first time since they met, both of them allowed themselves a quiet thought. We can face it all. Together. Jack lifted his head, looking up at Mark. Even if the world hates it? Mark's lips curved into a small, warm smile. Even if the world hates it, We have each other. That's enough. Jack let himself believe it. For now, at least the world could wait. And in that waiting, they found something stronger than headlines, scrutiny, or expectation. They found each other. Chapter 9, Lines Drawn. The weekend began quietly, but the calm was fragile. Mark had barely closed the door to his apartment when he noticed the tension in the air. His parents were there. His mother seated with perfect composure in the living room. His father standing near the window, hands behind his back, eyes narrowing. "You've made your choice visible," his mother said softly, almost measured, almost calm. "And now we must act." Mark's jaw tightened. "Act? What do you mean?" "You've put yourself, and this company, at risk," his father said sharply. "We cannot allow this to continue unchecked. There are expectations, responsibilities." "I understand responsibility," Mark replied evenly. "But this isn't a threat. It's a person I care about. That's all." His mother's eyes softened just slightly. "We're trying to protect you. You think you can weather the storm on your own. But this young man—" "He's not young in the way you mean," Mark interrupted, calm but firm. "And he's not a problem. He's steady, thoughtful, not a liability. He's someone I trust." His father's frown deepened. "Trust isn't enough in the world outside these walls. People will use it against you. People will hurt him, and by extension you." "I'm aware," Mark said. "And I will not let that dictate my life. Or his." His mother shook her head slightly. "It isn't just about public perception, Mark. It's about safety. The world can be cruel to people like him, to people like us. You're taking risks we cannot condone." Mark exhaled slowly. "I appreciate your concern, truly. But I am not a child anymore. And neither is he. He's capable, thoughtful, and I will protect him. That is my responsibility, not yours." His parents exchanged a glance, brief, unreadable, before his father spoke again. "Then we must draw lines. Clear lines. We cannot sanction recklessness." Mark's chest tightened. "I'm not reckless. I am deliberate." Meanwhile, Jack faced his own storm at home. His father arrived without warning, a shadow in the doorway. The quiet was suffocating. "You've seen the headlines," he said finally, voice low, controlled. "Do you understand how serious this is?" "I do," Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I also trust him. I trust us. That's all that matters." "Trust? Do you understand how fragile trust is in the eyes of the world?" His father's tone was sharp now. "One wrong move, one misstep, your reputation, the people who rely on him, it all falls apart." Jack swallowed. "I know, but I cannot hide from him. I will not." His father's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand the consequences. You're putting yourself in danger. You're putting him in danger. The scrutiny, the rumors, the people who will try to tear you apart." Jack's chest tightened, but he held his ground. "I am aware, and I accept it, but I also accept him. That's not negotiable." That evening, Mark and Jack escaped to the quiet refuge Mark had insisted they use before, his cabin on the outskirts of the city. The trees whispered softly around them as they entered, shedding coats, shedding tension, even if only slightly. Mark exhaled. "I needed this," he admitted. Jack nodded, settling into the warmth of the cabin. "Me too. But my father, your parents, they're not going to let this go easily." Mark's fingers brushed Jack's gently. "We knew that, and we'll face it. Together. Quietly. Deliberately. But together." Jack rested his head on Mark's shoulder, heart racing with a mix of fear and relief. "I'm scared." "Me too," Mark said softly. "But fear doesn't have to control us." They spent hours talking, planning, and holding each other through the tension. Every new message, every whispered threat, every disapproving glance from the world outside became just another challenge they could face together. Mark's hand found Jack's again. "We won't let them break this. Not our bond. Not our trust." Jack tilted his head up to meet his eyes. "Even if they try everything?" Mark nodded. "Even then." We have each other. That's enough. Jack let himself believe it. Slowly, deliberately, they rebuilt their sense of safety, not in the world, but in each other. As the night deepened, they talked quietly, laughing softly at small things, sharing stories, remembering moments when the world had seemed simpler. And in the quiet of the cabin, among the trees and the distant hum of the city, they made an unspoken promise. No one, no family, no headline, no rumor will break this bond unless we allow it. And for the first time in days, they believed it. Chapter 10. Standing Together. The weekend stretched into early evening, and the tension in both apartments had not eased. Mark leaned against the balcony railing of his penthouse, phone in hand. He had tried patience, reason, subtle hints, but now, subtlety wasn't enough. Jack's name appeared on the screen. A text, simple, direct. "Jack, are you ready?" Mark exhaled. "I am," he whispered to himself, then tapped the screen. "Mark, let's do this." The first meeting was at Jack's home. His father sat stiffly in the living room, eyes sharp, arms crossed. The air was heavy with unspoken threats and warnings. Jack stood beside Mark, fingers brushing lightly, grounding each other without words. "I know you're worried," Jack began, voice steady but soft. "And I understand why. But Mark isn't just anyone. He's thoughtful, careful, and he cares about me. About us." His father's frown deepened. "That may be true, but the world doesn't see it that way. People can be cruel. You don't understand the risks." Jack shook his head. "I do. But I've thought about it every day since this began. And I choose him. Every day. Not because it's easy, but because it's right for me." Mark added quietly but firmly, "I respect you, sir. I also respect Jack. I don't ask permission, but I hope you can understand our choice. We're not reckless, and we're not hiding. We care about each other, and we're willing to face everything together." Silence followed. It was heavy, uncomfortable. But slowly, Jack's father's gaze softened. Not fully, not yet, but enough that Jack's hand trembled slightly as it brushed Mark's. "Words are easy," his father said finally. "Actions are what matter." Jack nodded. "Then watch us. See that we're committed, that we're careful, that we care." The next evening, Mark faced his parents. His mother had prepared a quiet dinner, her composure like glass, beautiful, reflective, but fragile. "You've chosen him," she said, almost more as a statement than a question. "Yes," Mark replied evenly, meeting her eyes. "I choose him. I choose us. I hope you can see that this isn't a whim. It's deliberate, thoughtful, mutual." His father's frown didn't soften immediately. "You know the scrutiny, the risks. You're aware of the social implications." "I am," Mark said, voice firm but not angry. "And I accept them. But Jack is not a threat. He's steady, kind, thoughtful, and capable. I would protect him with everything I am, just as I know he would protect me. That is not reckless. That is partnership." His mother leaned back, studying him. "It is bold. But boldness isn't always wrong." Mark allowed himself a small smile. "We ask only for understanding. Not blind approval. Not celebration. Just acceptance that this is real, and that we are real together." Later, at the small cabin, their refuge, they allowed themselves a quiet moment, hands brushing, hearts steadying against each other's warmth. Jack exhaled, head leaning lightly on Mark's shoulder. "We made them listen," he said softly. "Even a little." Mark's fingers traced the line of Jack's back. "It's not enough to force them to understand completely, but it's enough to show them we're deliberate, not careless. That we're willing to fight together." Jack smiled faintly, warmth rising in his chest. "Together." Mark's voice was low, certain, always together. And for the first time in days, maybe weeks, the world outside, the scrutiny, the headlines, the expectations, felt a little smaller. Because inside this cabin, inside the quiet space they had carved out for themselves, their bond was unshakable, deliberate, and real. They had fought for this quietly, patiently, and with intention. and they would continue to fight, not for approval but for each other. The future was uncertain, yes. The world outside would not yield easily. But here, in this shared silence, Mark and Jack understood a truth stronger than any headline, any disapproval, any expectation. They had chosen each other, and that choice was theirs alone. Chapter 11, Home. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, soft and golden. Mark stirred first, letting his hand find Jack's, curled gently around his side. For a moment, he just held him, breathing in the quiet warmth of the room. Jack shifted slightly, eyes fluttering open, and smiled softly. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning," Mark replied, voice low but steady. "Sleep well." Jack nodded. "Better than I have in weeks." Mark smiled faintly. "Good. We earned it." The world outside had not disappeared, but it had softened. Headlines still appeared, but no longer carried the weight of accusation. They were curious, occasionally admiring, and occasionally incredulous. Investors had quieted, analysts had moved on. Even the families had softened. Jack's father had called once or twice, his tone less sharp, more watchful. "I see you're serious," he had said once. "Take care of each other. That's all I ask." Mark's parents had visited the cabin for dinner a few days later. The tension had been there, faint, cautious, but even they had started to see the deliberate care between the two men. "You care for him," Mark's mother said quietly, studying Jack. "I can see it. That counts for something." Jack smiled, small and genuine. "I do. And he cares for me." Mark's father remained silent for a moment, then nodded. A faint approval, not loud or dramatic, but enough. "Then take care of each other. That is all that matters." That morning, in their small shared apartment back in the city, Mark poured coffee while Jack opened the blinds, letting sunlight spill across the room. They moved together like a quiet rhythm, hands brushing, soft laughter. A touch here, a word there. Every gesture was deliberate, caring, intimate without needing words. Jack leaned back against the counter, sipping his coffee, and glanced at Mark. "You ever think about how far we've come? From that first night to now?" Mark smiled, warm and easy. "Every day. And I still don't think it's entirely real. But I like that it is." Jack set his cup down and reached for Mark's hand. "We've fought for this. Quietly, deliberately, together. And it's ours. Nobody can take it." Mark tightened his grip slightly, heart steady. "Nobody. And we'll keep it that way. Safe. Secure. Ours." The day unfolded slowly, peacefully. A walk in the park, unnoticed by anyone except for their quiet presence. A lunch shared without interruption. Conversations that meandered from mundane to meaningful, laughter spilling easily between them. In the evening, they returned home and found themselves on the couch, shoulders touching, hands intertwined. Outside, the city lights flickered, distant and indifferent. Jack rested his head against Mark's shoulder. "I feel home," he said softly. Mark kissed the top of his head, gentle, deliberate. "I do too, and I think we always will." Jack smiled, closing his eyes, letting himself soak in the quiet certainty of it all. Mark held him closer, feeling the steady warmth that had become his anchor. For the first time in weeks, the chaos of the world felt distant, powerless. Because here, in this small, soft space they had built together, they were unshakable. They were deliberate, they were together, and they were finally home. Epilogue. Together, finally. The morning was quiet, with the soft golden light of early January spilling across the apartment. Outside, the city hummed along as usual, but inside, everything felt deliberately slow, deliberately safe. Mark sat at the small breakfast table, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Jack leaned against the counter, stretching, hair slightly messy from sleep. "You're up early," Jack said, smiling, voice still soft with sleep. "Someone has to make sure we start the day properly," Mark replied, handing him a mug. His fingers brushed Jack's as he did, lingering just enough to make Jack's chest warm. Jack took the mug, smiling. "Properly, huh? I'll drink to that. They sipped quietly, the comfort between them easy and natural. No tension, no scrutiny, just the rhythm of two people who had weathered the storms of the world together. Later that morning, Mark and Jack walked through a quiet park near their apartment. The trees were bare, the air crisp, but it didn't matter. They had each other, and that was enough. Jack looped his arm through Mark's. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" he asked softly. "All the time," Mark admitted. "From that first night at the restaurant to now. We've faced scrutiny, families, the media, and here we are. Still deliberate, still together." Jack nodded, squeezing his arm lightly. "And stronger for it. I wouldn't trade this for anything." That afternoon, Mark's parents stopped by, not for confrontation, but for a casual visit. They brought pastries, a small, deliberate gesture of peace. Mark and Jack welcomed them warmly. Conversation flowed easily this time. Mark's mother asking about Jack's work, his father commenting quietly on Mark's plans. The tension that had hung in the air months ago was gone, replaced with cautious respect. "You two seem happy," his mother said finally, with a small smile. "That's good. It counts for something." Jack smiled gently. "It counts for everything," he said. Mark's father nodded, eyes softening. "You take care of each other," he said simply. "That's all I ask." Later, Jack invited his parents over for a small dinner. The atmosphere was light, comfortable. Jack's father made a quiet toast, simple but meaningful. To care deliberately and to choose wisely. "You two have done that, and it shows." Jack and Mark exchanged a glance, hands brushing, and both felt a swell of quiet triumph. They hadn't forced approval. They hadn't demanded it. They had simply lived deliberately together, and that had earned a tentative, warm acknowledgement. Night fell, and they returned to their apartment. They settled onto the couch, shoulders touching, hands intertwined. Outside, the city lights shimmered faintly, but inside, everything was calm, intimate, deliberate. Jack rested his head against Mark's shoulder. "I feel home," he said softly. Mark kissed the top of his head. "And I feel the same. Every day. We've earned this calm. We've built this together." Jack tilted his head up, smiling, eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lamps. "It feels like forever, even though it's only been months." Mark's arm wrapped around him, protective, grounding. "It will feel like forever. And I promise, we'll keep choosing this. Every day, deliberately, together." Jack exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the world fall away. "Together," he whispered. Mark pressed a gentle kiss to his temple. "Always." And in the quiet, warm glow of their home, they finally understood that they had built something unshakable. Not just a relationship, but a life deliberately chosen, protected, and filled with love. No headlines, no scrutiny, no expectations could touch it. Not now, not ever. They were home, and they were finally completely together.